Hey everybody, Richard Neese here with Weicker Realtors, a space place. We appreciate you guys tuning in to the Real Estate Rundown. I've got Dominic Gill here with me. We had a little bit of a setback.
A little bit.
Trying to run different mediums and ended up coming off of a different profile we're using to help expand our reach. So, hey, somebody just jumped on here.
Yeah, let's go.
Chris said he's still waiting. I don't know if he's jumped on yet. We really meant 40 minutes on that delay there. So
yeah, now I got the notification that you went live. So apparently this was a mistake on my end. So we got Chris Cotton, Miss Kathy watching right now. Brandon Snyder. Hey, Brandon, nice to see you again. So
Brandon knows what's going on. Yeah.
Yeah. So basically, there's another fake account out there of Richard, and somehow it hacked into your iPhone.
Well, there you go.
That's the story we're going with. But no, that. We run different profiles so we can operate different devices and stuff, and you have to have your own Facebook account. So there's actually multiple Richard Neeses out there.
That's right.
So
that's a scary thought for sure.
Yeah, I know. And so there's actually multiple Dominic Gills, and there's also some other names that Dominic Gill goes by.
Right. So the Real Estate Rundown is a way for us to help good people get to a better place. If you guys haven't tuned in before, I know we have a lot of regulars on here, but we want to give you information that's going to make you a better buyer, a better seller. Looks like Tyler Fortenberry's on here. My wife, Catherine Neese.
John Gill.
Becky DeMike. Thank you guys so much.
My
please
wife.
Share. Please comment. If you guys have any questions about real estate, we want to be able to help you with that. We usually have experts on. Today we've got Dominic as my co-host, and he's an expert at social media. You know, we're always trying to push the limits, and the way that you do that, sometimes you fail a little bit and you learn, and then you keep going, right?
Yeah, you got to just wing it sometimes.
That's right.
And a little bit of what we're doing tonight is we're winging it. So apparently our program synced to the wrong account. So now we're going to be doing old style Facebook Live.
I don't think we're going to have any more. Just do it on there. I know you're pretty upset.
Oh, I know it. I know it.
So we're going to talk a little bit about the buying process tonight. I'm sure there's folks on here that haven't watched the show before. What we want to do is we want to talk about square one all the way to the closing. So the time you start thinking about looking at houses and looking at it on Zillow and Trulia, all the way to the time you actually get the keys and walk in the door. We want to cover that pretty briefly because we cut into our 10 minutes. But like I said, we appreciate you guys tuning in. The first thing I always recommend, folks, when you start digging into Zillow and Trulia and stuff like that, you're going to find your dream house. I promise you're going to find your dream house. Now, it may not be in your budget, but you're going to find your dream house. I know my wife's looked at several out on Smith Lake that have 7- and 8-figure price tags on it, a little bit more than what we want to spend. But
y'all looked at 8-figure price tags.
You know, the castle is somewhere around in there.
Yeah, I think so.
So she was looking at those, talking about how much she loves it, and I said, "Honey, we can't afford those. So we'd love to, but we don't." And that's the hard part. You get on there, you start window shopping, you find everything you love, and it's good to get ideas from it. But when you find the house, there's nothing worse than finding the house and then calling the lender and realizing that you're a good ways off of that.
Yeah.
And on the other side of that, you may think, man, I can't afford anything, and then the lender tells you can afford more. You know, we got great lenders on here. I know that who was it? Brandon was on here. We got some other folks as well. That's the first step for me. If you want to call us through Zillow or Trulia, or call me personally off of this, off of the Facebook Lives that we do, I'd be glad to help you. But we want to get in contact with the lender first, because I can't tell you how big a house you can buy, but they can. They've got the formulas, they've got the programs, so they can work it in and say, this is a good price range for what you want per payment, or this is the most that our loan will allow. There's all sorts of different criteria on that, and they're going to help walk you through that process, especially in the early stages, because that's the most important thing. Mm-hmm. Once you get that criteria, then you pick up the phone, you give me a call and say, hey, I'm good for X amount. All right, well, we're going to find a range of houses in this price point, and then we're going to show them to you. I'm going to send them to you. We're going to go look at them, and then you're going to fall in love with one of those. Because like I said, the worst thing possible is if you fall in love with a house that's just a little bit out of your range. I've seen people literally break down and not buy one because they couldn't have that house.
Right.
And that's a sad thing, because they may be in a worse situation because of rent or whatever, and now they can't get the house that they want.
No.
We had a bunch of people jumping on here: Joe Polovich, Josh Pope, Jerry Mason, Christy Pettis, Kim Haynes, Carter Hayes. I appreciate you guys so much. Please share. Please comment. We're talking about the buying process tonight. And we had that little bit of a slip, but we're good now.
We're good all the time. I may not be all here because I'm still like over analyzing how did this happen? What went wrong? And I'm embarrassed, and but sometimes you just gotta like own it.
Just go with it, man.
Just own it, man. Just go with it.
So the whole point is so we can get that information
Tim
out
Knox
there.
Jumping on here.
If we can get that information out to folks, it may help somebody buy a home. It may help somebody move toward a little bit closer to it, and that's what we really want. We got plenty of professionals out there that can help from the lending side. We've got Chris Cotton with the home inspectors, and Chris was actually on the radio today. Did you hear him?
No, because I was not in the state at that time.
Well, I figured for sure you would have been listening on the WKUL app.
I was.
JR, are you hearing this?
JR's are you hearing this? JR, good. You're not here.
But we had Chris Cotton on there, and that's one of the next things. But the very next thing is the showing process. We found some homes online that we like. We've kind of narrowed down the criteria, and then I'll tell you, having several kids. I mean, what would be your nightmare if you were trying to sell your home?
Trying to sell my house with several kids.
That's a nightmare.
There's a nightmare scenario right there.
And the reason it's tough is because a lot of buyers, they'll see something online and they want to look at it
today.
15 minutes.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's a couple hours. And sometimes that's not reasonable.
Yeah.
And what a lot of people don't realize is you may have Dominic with 5 kids at home, or Teresa, I should say, 5 kids at home, and they can't just pick up within 15 or 20 minutes. So if you're not flexible with the showing times, you're going to put yourself at a disadvantage because trust me, they want to sell their house in most cases. Sometimes I wonder about sellers, but in most cases they want to sell the house. So you've got to give them a little bit of flexibility as far as getting stuff ready because they want it to be in the best condition possible. They don't want their things to get in the way of what you see in the house.
Absolutely.
That's the biggest thing.
And I can go and talk about one story. Was with a cousin of mine, Geronimo's wife, Michelle. Whenever I was selling one of their houses, and every time I called on a short notice thing, she would get aggravated. Of course, we're cousins. We grew up around each other. Yeah. She would be like, Dominic, don't do that to me. She always said, I'm like, I promise you, Michelle, it's not my fault. It's not anything. Yeah. So she had 3-4 kids. She had 4 kids at the time. So she had to go and clean up the house, load them all up, take them to the grandma's house, and I'd always request for someone to call me back when they're done so that they can come back in.
Absolutely.
And you would be amazed at how many times you would explain the situation. And this is just a little peeve going back on it. Of giving the courtesy when you don't show.
That's right.
And that was one of the things when you're dealing with those situations was we would schedule it. They go through all the work and then they don't show, and that's the hardest thing about it. And it deflates sellers when that happens.
Yeah, and I'll tell you, a lot of times the sellers get frustrated at their listing agent. Until
Jeanette Bergen, until you know him, then you'll change your opinion.
Oh, come on now. Yeah, but I would agree with that 100%. There's a lot of people that they'll drive by, and I always ask my buyers to drive by first anyways. I say, make sure you like the area. Then we'll go show it because I don't want to set up an appointment or 3 or 4 appointments and then be off the whole day because you don't like the area.
That's it.
So I kind of put it back on them and say we need to take some responsibility because you do have people that are living in these homes. I'd say 80% of the time around here. Mm-hmm. So that's the biggest thing is making sure that you're respectful. But then we go in the house. We love the house. We find the one after going through several. What's next?
So you find the one you want, then you got the pre-approval process done.
Yeah, we've already done the pre-approval process, and we passed that off to one of our great lenders, and they talked them through. We got into that price point. Once we got into that price point, we started showing the houses.
So they found the house. When they found the house, so the next thing you do is write an offer, and in the process of that, the buyer's agent needs to go through and
there's a lot of legwork on the back
side. you got the buyer agent typically goes through and looks at what would be a fair offer on the property, and there are times when it's underpriced and say, look, it's good as it sits, and they're going to try to leverage to get you the best deal possible if they're a good agent.
Yep. In a lot of markets, I mean, sometimes it's moved quickly because we've got that. I know in Knoxville and Nashville and Huntsville especially, but Coleman's getting that way too, where
multiple offers.
You don't want to get into a situation where you're waiting and you're going back and forth, and then 2 or 3 people come in with an offer.
Yep.
I mean, you want to come in strong. You want to get locked in because guess what? That price goes up whenever you start working with multiple offers. That's the big thing.
Yes.
So we put in the offer, and there's lots of contingencies on that. We have finance contingencies. Most of the time you have appraisals that you have to go through, home inspection contingencies. There may be all sorts of things that we have to write in there. But once we've come
But then there's a reason why it needs to be done ahead of time, and what we call is the due diligence period is because Alabama being a buyer beware state.
Absolutely.
Caveat him towards something that as I talk to other agents in other states, you know, when I
shocked.
They cannot believe. They're like, "What?
Right?
How does that happen? Y'all don't have a
Seller
Bible
disclosure?
worth of seller disclosures and everything?" I was like, "No, absolutely. It's buyer beware, and it's the buyer's duty to go and find out all the information they can about the house. The seller doesn't have to disclose anything that does not would be harmful towards the next buyer. So if the got mold in the house, you know, the seller needs to disclose that. You know,
and that's debatable on that. I mean, how are you going to call it mold if you're not an expert? You know, there's some questions on that where if they don't know that's what it is. Now, if they've got it tested and it's black mold and it's dangerous,
there was one situation with an agent a few years ago that was telling me about the sellers bought a house as a foreclosure, painted over the mold.
Oh my gosh!
And then resold the house.
Ooh.
And whenever that mold was discovered, you know, not the fault of the selling agent, but they came back and they sued the seller because in that situation they were aware of something that could be harmful to those buyers, and in that case, the buyer beware status was
I agree,
was overwritten or whatever,
overruled.
Yeah.
No, I agree, and you know, with the buyer beware, you definitely have to be careful, and that's why it's so important that you get home inspections now.
Yes.
In Tennessee, you know, he was talking about an agent up there. There's so many disclosures that they pretty much have to tell you. Apparently, the Lakers re-engaged the Spurs to get Kawhi Leonard. There we go.
They are.
But there was so many disclosures that, I mean, it's good to have an inspection, but they have most of the stuff laid out for you.
Yes.
Whereas in Alabama, you've really got to dig in and make sure. You got to check your HVAC units. You got to check attics. You got to do the whole inspection, which Chris Cotton can help you with. He'll go through line by line and make sure everything's good, place by place. But we've got the contract. We've done some negotiating back and forth, and we've got to make it fairly brief because it's a long process to get through all this. But let's say you had a great agent. He worked hard for you. You got the best.
Or
deal
she.
possible. That's right. Or she. They got the best deal possible for you. Now in Alabama, or in our area especially, you have the home inspection period, and usually it's about 10 days here to get that home inspection. In other areas, they may have inspections before you actually put an offer in. Mm-hmm. I think that can be pretty dangerous in a hot market, but you know that's their prerogative. I mean, if they want to do that, they can do that. And sometimes they'll do that so that when you negotiate, the price on that is with repairs or without repairs. Whereas the way we do it, you start off with a price, then you negotiate again, and then you can even negotiate again once you get to the appraisal after the inspection. So there's so many places that you're constantly negotiating on. So
anytime that any of those situations where those contingencies are enacted, that can be a point of where you have to renegotiate in order to go through. Whereas, for instance, if the house doesn't appraise, then obviously they can't get financing, and you have a financing contingency in there. Yeah. So therefore, that's whenever you have to.
And that's in most cases.
Yeah.
I know.
And that's
in
whenever
hot
you
markets, they come in, and there's actually people that are willing to take out the appraisal contingency. That way, if it doesn't appraise, they'll bring cash to the table because things are moving so quickly.
Right.
So, I mean, there's some other options, but in our
I'm
area
saying,
especially.
well, I guess what I'm getting at is that you can't just negotiate in the middle of a contract.
Right.
A contingency has to be enacted at that point.
That's true.
You know, before you can start negotiating, an issue has to come up with the contract that's going to cause a break in it, and that's when you go back to that table again.
Yeah, it makes it voidable at that point.
Right.
At some point in there, and then you've got, like you said, home inspection appraisals. You've got all sorts of home sale contingencies. Right. I mean, there's so many things out there that a skilled agent's going to help walk you through. We got Skylar Cox, Katie Harbin, Matthew Carroll, April Powell, Monica Dubberly. Thank you guys so much for getting on. Miss Cotton, thank you for getting on here. Heather Hankey, Sheena Henderson, Zach Thomas. We do the real estate rundown to help good people get to a better place. We want to give you information about the home buying process, home selling process. We bring experts on, whether it's a home inspector, a lender, whoever it might be, to give you that information so that you can enjoy a little bit of edutainment from your own home. I know you don't like that word.
I don't like that word at all. Don't like it all. Don't like it at all.
Well, we want to make sure we give you a little bit. He provides the humor, I provide the knowledge. That's how it works.
Sometimes.
Sometimes it's the opposite too. But
yeah.
But like I said, we appreciate you guys tuning in. So once we get just blocked out there. Once we get through the inspection process.
Mm-hmm.
We have the home inspector come in. We have somebody with HVAC get up on the roof. We check the attic. We foundation specialist. We've inspected everything we can inspect.
Right.
Then we've gone back to the negotiation table, and we've either got repairs done, or we've gotten money off the top, or walk away. I mean, there's a third option. Nobody wants to accept that, but there is a third option.
And as an agent, I can personally attest that third option happens a lot more often.
You're right.
Than we would like.
We were talking about that, I think, was it this morning or yesterday, where somebody had been through several contracts and they just weren't going to give up.
That was yesterday. We were talking about that.
Right. Yeah. They just weren't going to give up on it. I mean, they said, we're not doing repairs.
Is it 8?
Oh, yeah, that one too.
Yeah.
That's one of the great things. The collaboration that I have at my company at Wacker Realtors and Space Place is huge. We share our knowledge together. I mean, we've got agents that do 100 deals a year. We've got some that do 10 deals a year, but everybody's learning from each other, and that's the big thing. And that's really supported by Brenda Elliott, our broker. Thank you, Brenda. We appreciate the environment you create. So we've gotten through all the inspections. Now, what's next?
So now it goes through so it's got through all the inspections. So next is going to go through the underwriting and the appraisal process.
Yep. So
appraisal, then underwriting.
You know, we've really got two sets going at the same time. So you've got underwriting going on, but you also like in-house underwriting, and then you've got the appraiser that should be going out in that same time period and getting the appraisal back so that they can go, like we've got rural development loans around here that we use a lot, FHA loans, things like that. So once the appraisal's done, then it all ties in with the underwriting, and then we're getting a little bit closer.
Yeah, and then once they have all the underwriting and everything done, everything's approved, that's whenever they will get, they'll order the title search.
Yep, and that varies. You know, that can be done in the beginning, that can be done towards the end. It just depends on what kind of time frame you have. But there's so many things going on at once, and most people don't realize. You know, they think an agent just unlocks the door and that's it. But we're coordinating with 4, 5, 6 different companies at one time to make sure that everything's rolling.
Yeah, and then so after the title search and the appraisal clears, the title search clears, the underwriting clears, everything. That's whenever you get the words that agents love to hear. Everyone loves to hear.
That's right.
Those 3 wonderful
CTC.
Words: clear to close.
That's
clear
exactly
to close.
Right. And I would say in the last couple of years, it's been about 2 years, almost 3 years ago now, that TRID law went into effect. So we now have that 72-hour cooling off period. Yeah. So the clear to close means we've got everything ready to go. Now the buyer gets 3 days to make sure that they're not being pressured into something that they're not comfortable with doing. They make sure they get to see the numbers. They have to literally sign off on it 72 hours before they close. And that's huge. You know, to begin with, I heard a lot of negative on that. Agents were frustrated because they wanted to push through deals. They wanted to get things done faster.
It saved a lot of drama. It saved a lot of drama in that because, believe me, there was many stories, and I've had a situation because I'm a pre-TRID agent, you know, so I remember what it was before. I wasn't there long before, but I've had a dozen or so closings pre-TRID to understand what exactly happens before then. Maybe not quite a dozen, but there were times when you're at the closing table and everybody's seeing those and what the TRID documents they call now, they were HUDs back then.
Yeah, HUD ones, right?
Yeah, you would get the HUD disclosures and everyone's looking at it. And I mean, me and the other agent on the other side, if there was an agent on the other side, we'd be going down the lines, just making sure
everything was right.
Because that was our do or die moment that we had to go through. Because that's the first time we saw them and make sure that everything was correct. And then you'd have closings that would last several hours longer than typical.
Literally negotiating at the table at the closing, which
or trying to research what happened to this feed, what happened to that feed.
Right.
And so now with that 3-day period, that's whenever those things can be discussed with the buyer, the seller, and their agents to go and discover what's going on with this. And you have that period to fix everything again, but then it restarts a 3-day period all over again once you correct it.
But I tell you what, the protection of the consumer is the most important thing.
Absolutely,
And the thing that I love about that is that it also, you can look at the numbers and you don't have that pressure on the other side. Literally, when you're at the table and they say, is this correct? I mean, how many people are willing to back out on all the time and effort that they put in over $500 or $1,000 or sometimes more?
People do.
Some people do. But the thing is, the pressure for most people, I think that they should. If it's not correct, you should back out and say this needs to be corrected.
Right. And a lot of the times when the ones that did back out of it is whenever it was a battle all the way from the beginning to the end. And that's usually the fault on both the agents. I never had too much of it. I kept drama between me and the agent. I never, but we would go at it, and they would bring in their client. Yep. And it would create hostility and hostile closing tables. And I've had some that were pretty close to being hostile.
Brandon had a good point here. He says that it only resets the 3-day period in certain circumstances.
Okay.
So it's not all circumstances.
Okay, right? Okay. I just know one did on me.
Yeah. Either way, it's important to protect the consumer.
Yeah, absolutely.
So once we're all happy with the numbers, then the magic happens. Yeah. You get your keys. We get the promissory note signed. Everybody gets their check. Everybody is happy at that point. But I will say that sometimes it lasts a little bit longer. Yeah. There are certain circumstances where the seller needs a little more time to get out, which I'm firmly against if at all possible. I want everything to be completed at closing, because when the buyer purchases this house at closing, it's his responsibility. Mm-hmm. And then if you have a seller that stays over 3, 7, 14 days afterwards, anything that happens, and Chris Green talked about this, where a guy had shot in the ground or shot in the house, and it didn't cover his, it was the seller. He had extra days and ended up firing a weapon inside of a house, and the insurance didn't cover it. So it caused some damage. I don't know if you remember when Chris came on.
I don't remember the story.
But yeah, he had talked about it didn't cover it because they didn't have renter's insurance, they didn't have any other insurance.
Wow.
So that was a seller, and there's already been a final walkthrough signed. Everything's clear. So that's the last thing that I would say. Everybody's happy, but if you can get everybody closed and out the door that day, that's a huge thing. Mm-hmm. So if we don't have any questions, I know we've run a little bit over between the 10 minutes we talked on the other.
And believe me, it's a lot harder for us to run over than it is for y'all, because if we had 10 minutes less of air conditioning in here.
That's right.
And Brandon knows what it's like in here without air conditioning.
That's right. I think at one point me and Josh about passed out one time.
Oh yeah.
But we appreciate you guys tuning in to the Real Estate Rundown. Tasha Nail, Tim Klein, Ethan Ponder, Lacey Burks, Elizabeth Robinson, Stephen Thomas. Good to see you, brother. Matthew Type Miller, Lisa Edie. We want to help good people get to a better place. If you guys have a question about the process, if you want to have an expert on, or you want us to talk about something in the real estate realm in particular, we'll do that. We'll bring the experts on, because all we want to do is help good people get to a better place. Also, I want to do one quick shout out. I don't know if you guys can see it up there. Is it on? No, it's not. Put it down here. We're having one of our first wine and cheese open houses. It's actually going to be tomorrow from 6 to 8 at 1750 Sharpton Road. So if you want to come by, enjoy a beautiful home built by Geronimo Silva, we'd be glad to have you. And if you guys have any questions, give me a call, 256-708-1511, and we'll help you get to a better place.
Just do it!
Oh, God.
I have to get it in.